Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the March 10th, 2025 public hearing conducted by the Haverford Township Board of Commissioners. It's approximately 6:17 p.m. This hearing is being held in accordance with properly advertised notices to consider ordinance number P3 2025, which proposes amendments to Chapter 37, Wards and Precincts, to modify the boundaries of Ward Precincts 3-4 and 4-4. The purpose of these changes is to ensure that our voting districts contain as equal a number of electors as practicable based on the 2020 federal census. At this time, I ask that we begin with the Pledge of Allegiance led by our Township Manager, Dave Berman.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. To begin this public hearing, I'd like to ask our Township Solicitor, Mr. John Walco, to begin the meeting with the introduction of any exhibits to be included as evidence for this public hearing.
Thank you, President Trombetta. I have 3 exhibits to be marked for this public hearing. First will be Board Exhibit 1, or B1, which will be the ordinance itself, redistricting and moving the boundaries of wards 3-4 and 4-4. Board Exhibit 2 will be the legal notice and proof of publication that was published in the Delaware County Daily and Sunday Times on March 4th, 2025, giving the public notice of tonight's public hearing at this time and at this location. Board Exhibit 3 will be the March 6, 2024 memo from CH Planning, which is the memo that, which was the planning agency that was retained by the township to look into fair and equitable redistricting, that made the recommendation, which was ultimately looked into by the committee and then before this board tonight for consideration, that being one of 3 map proposed, and this is map amendment 1. There was a public meeting further over the summer related to this decision. By way of background, the Pennsylvania Constitution and the Municipal Reapportionment Act requires all municipalities in which the elected officials are elected in districts must examine the distribution of their voting districts to ensure that they are nearly as even in population as practical after each decennial census is reported. So that would be after the 2020 census. Legal guidance has provided from past instances that to ensure an equal number of residents are in each ward as nearly as possible, no ward should deviate more than 10% from the average population. Again, as we know, Haverford Township, according to our charter, is made up of different wards. As a result of studies and the evaluations done by our consultants looking into this matter, it was determined that the decennial census revealed that Haverford Township's voting districts are imbalanced in the number of electors, primarily in 2 wards, Ward 4, such that Ward 4 deviated above the average population by 10.6%, so slightly above 10, but still above 10. And Ward 3 deviated below the average population by 6.5%. So again, not quite 10%, but still not on average with the rest of the wards. So really what we're dealing with here is Ward 3 and Ward 4. Every other ward, every other precinct in the ward remains unchanged. It's not a part of this ordinance or this proposed change. And essentially what would be done through this ordinance would be a proposal to relocate 425 electors from Ward 4-4 into Ward 3-4. That would result in a deviation of approximately 3.1% from the rest of the other wards, which would match the average deviation on all wards. To get more technical, it would locate or relocate census blocks 1000, 1001, 1005, 1006, 1010, 1011, and 1012 from Ward 4-3 to Ward 3-4. Sorry, 4-4 to 3-4. You cannot split census blocks, and we're not splitting census blocks. It's been determined that through our studies that this relocation proposed doesn't violate the Voting Rights Act. It does not have a substantial impact on any future election outcomes known today. And it would not change school districts, magisterial district judges, or any other associated government functions that are provided to these wards, simply for the election and their ward leaders that would be voted upon. What the ordinance does is simply make the amendments to the sections within our code that outline the wards that were done and reviewed by our township engineer, Pannoni Engineering. And it does provide a revised ward map showing the changes to those two wards and precincts. And with that, I believe it'd be proper at this time to turn this over to the public to receive public comment on this ordinance. And to be clear, this isn't ultimately the decision of Haverford Township. This would be an ordinance that we change our ordinance. It would then need to be approved by the Delaware County Board of Elections, which in turn must obtain approval from the Court of Common Pleas in Delaware County. There would likely be a subsequent hearing held by the Board of Elections, assuming that this ordinance passes through the township today, to again determine whether or not this change should be made. And if it's approved by the court, it would then go to the Pennsylvania Department of State to ensure, again, that it's in line with the census blocks and everything is proper and in order. So with that, I would turn it over to the public to see if there are any questions or comments related to this proposed ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Walco. And at this time, we will open the floor to the public comment. So if you wish to speak, please step forward, state your name and address for the record, and limit your remarks to approximately 3 minutes. Am I correct in thinking that they need to be sworn in or no?
I think at this point with public comment, there's no need to swear them in.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Sorry. I don't usually have trouble with people hearing me. Anyway, Ward 4 bled into Ward 3 before. As the quadrangle and Haverford Reserve gets bigger, I get it. All of the wards should match, and that's important. But when it comes down to voting, that's the precinct. And moving all of those voters from 4-4 to 4-3, I think is a bad move. It makes this the third largest precinct in the township. Let's talk about the first two. The first one is Haverford College. 2,000 voters in there. Those 2,000 voters, one-third to one-quarter of them have already graduated, and they've moved on. They moved to New York, they moved to Maryland, they moved to DC. They registered to vote there. There is no national voting system to take them off our registration. After 2 years of not voting, they fall off. Guess what? Don't get your conspiracy theories up. That precinct, you can look, has the lowest turnout, has about a 60% turnout in every election in the big ones, whereas every other precinct has an 80 to 90% turnout. So the denominator is big, but those people are not voting. They don't live here. The second one is the quadrangle. 4-1 is the other biggest one. Guess what? That is the quadrangle. More absentee ballots than any other precinct in the county. 1,000 people voted by mail. So it's okay if it's big, because most of them aren't showing up. 1,500 people in this precinct, I think, is too big. I get why you did it. You wanted to make the slightest possible change. My handout, guess what? I didn't do it by census blocks. I didn't read the backup paper. I didn't do my homework. I'm late to the party. I'm sorry. I had breast cancer last year. I wasn't reading emails. Anyway, I think it's too much. I think that I have spent the day actually working at my job, so not the whole day. But I think you could take block 1010, 1011, and 1012, which right abuts to 32, right below Colfax and Hillcrest. Those are all 3-2, and you could put them in 3-2. It wouldn't be a lot. You would still move people out of 4-4. They're moving anyway. I don't know why it matters how contiguous it is. If you've looked at the precincts, look at that first ward. It's a mess over there in 1-3. Like, there's places that 1-3 doesn't even touch itself. So, again, I'm only worried about people having access to vote. Our biggest precincts, people wait 45 to 50 minutes. 3-2 is already a little precinct. There's only 800 voters there. It could take more voters. I'm here with Mara Rogers, who is the judge of elections in 3-4. We definitely have to talk to the school district about more space, because there's not even enough places to put tables for people to fill out their ballots. So there's my spiel. Like I said, I'm late to the party. I apologize. Told you what I need to know. For me, it's just about people having the right to vote. And it's a shame in this township where, in my precinct, it happens to be 3-2, you wait in line for about 3.5 minutes. In 8-1, which there's 1,200 people there, you can wait for 45 minutes to an hour on a busy election. That's my story.
Thank you, Ms. Ander. Anybody else in the audience wish to speak this evening? There are no further comments. I'll now close the public comment portion of this hearing. Thank you, Ms. Ander, for participating. And I open the floor to my colleagues if they wish to offer any remarks. Is that a yes or no?
Yeah, I just briefly appreciate Ms. Ander's comments and her interest in making sure that all Haverford residents have easy access to voting. And her exhibit here changes some of the maps, but as she said in her presentation, she was just suggesting some census blocks moving. I would just, for the record, when she talked about the school district and the size, to clarify for the record, that 3-4 votes at the Oakmont School District Administration Building. So when you say more space, we're talking about within an existing polling place. That at one point prior to COVID did have 2 precincts voting in it. There has been some interior design changes that would make that more difficult, but that the building itself, in prior discussions with people involved in voting there, if it's a space issue, maybe there's different spaces within that building that hosts 3-4, but all valid points, and thank her for her participation in this hearing.
Thank you. Any further remarks? Board of Commissioners will now take. Oh, yes.
Sorry, I was just going to say our duty in this reapportionment at this point is to rearrange wards and not precincts. And it falls on the county to deal with precincts. Does it not, Mr. Walko?
It does not.
I think we're able to rearrange precincts as part of the wards themselves.
It would.
Just as long as we're not splitting the census blocks in doing so.
To me, there are a number of precinct issues in our township. I've got one particularly sticky one in the 6th Ward that I think we should deal with, but I don't think it's something that should hold up what we need to do and have needed to do for half a decade, which is to deal with the census. So I would, my vote to approve the plan as discussed is not a vote to suggest that precinct issues and voter numbers is not a concern, but I think it is a concern that we can address on a township-wide basis. In particular, in the 6th Ward, I have a neighborhood that is divided by what people thought was the left and the right side of the streets, but it is an apartment complex, so instead, everybody with an even-numbered apartment votes in one place, and everybody with an odd-numbered apartment votes somewhere else. And those are the kinds of things that I think we can still fix in the future without holding up what we want to do now.
Thank you. Any further remarks from my colleagues? Then the Board of Commissioners will take the testimony and evidence presented today under consideration as we move forward with deliberations on ordinance number P3 2025 this evening during our regular Board of Commissioners meeting at 7 p.m. Thank you for your participation in this process. The public hearing is now concluded. Thank you.